Blessings, good evening. We have some questions to be answered tonight, so I'll do my best. First question. Luang Por, could you please tell me how to practice the recollection of the Sangha? Well, as you almost certainly have heard, in Buddhism we have three refuges. The Buddha, it's the self-enlightened or fully awakened one. The Dhamma, the teaching. And the Sangha, those who have realized the same kind of insights as the Buddha. However, there's the Sangha is divided into two. There's what we call Samuti Sangha, is anyone who ordains or takes ordination as a monk or a nun or a novice or even lay practitioner such as anagarika. But then there's the Arya Sangha, who are you might say the real refuge, those who have realized one or all of the four stages of the path to enlightenment. So it's stream enterers, sotapannas, sakadagamis, once returners, anagamis, non-returners, and then arahants, fully enlightened, fully awakened beings who are students of the Buddha. They're not self-enlightened, they rely on the teachings of the Buddha, but they have the same realization of Nibbana as the Buddha, if they're arahants. So the Sangha is a very important refuge because the Sangha means ordinary human beings just like us can realize the same peace and insights as the Buddha. They're proof that this path of practice works. But of course they have to practice correctly according to the teachings and develop the same qualities that will lead to realization. So when we chant the recollection of the Sangha, yes, Supatipanno, Ujupatipanno, Nyayapatipanno, Samichipatipanno. Well, that is a recollection of the Sangha, the qualities of the Sangha, which any human being can develop, so they're not limited to one person. They're impersonal qualities. So practicing directly in line with the Dhamma, cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path, practicing with insight, developing insight into the impermanent, unsatisfactory and selfless nature of phenomena, practicing in accordance with the Dhamma, whatever Dhamma is appropriate for cultivating, pursuing the path, for purifying the mind from greed, anger and delusion. They've practiced that and then realized the fruits. So reading and chanting or reciting the recollection of the Sangha is a very good way to begin recollection of the Sangha. As a meditation, you can begin that meditation sometimes just in a discursive way, thinking about Sangha and the qualities of the Sangha. So in a more personal way, recollecting the life story, the people from the time of the Buddha, the enlightened Sangha then, or in more modern eras, more modern periods, enlightened Sangha who possess these qualities, or you believe they possess these qualities, reading their story, hearing about them, remembering them, and maybe even meeting them, paying respects to them, and then remembering the qualities of the people you've met. But when you meditate, you tend to be reducing the meditation down to an object that you can easily keep in mind. To be mindful of the Sangha, the qualities of the Sangha may mean just reciting one single word, Sangho, 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 like we recollect the Buddha using the word Buddho, Buddho. So you could recollect one simple word, and that is recollecting the Sangha. You could recollect the whole of the verse in praise of the Sangha, so Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho, you could run through that whole verse. You can do it as a discursive meditation, just remembering, recollecting the qualities of the Sangha as you've witnessed or you've read about, you've heard about. So there's a variety of approaches. Some people even just remember what a particular teacher, Sangha member, looks like, and then just remembers their face or their image. Depends on your mind how it works. Some people need more intellectual stimulation, so they do it as a more discursive meditation, thinking about the qualities of Sangha, recollecting particular individuals and how they represent those qualities. And that's still a meditation. You're sitting there, or walking meditation, or sitting meditation with your mind on one theme, the recollection of the Sangha and the qualities of the Sangha, whether it's relating to an individual or in a more abstract way. You're doing that, and your aim is not to let your mind stray out of that theme. You're not thinking about other aspects of Buddhism or other aspects of life. Keep your mind recollecting the theme of Sangha. But if your mind is becoming more aware, more stable, then just bring it down to maybe one word. It could be Sangho, Sangho, Sangho. It could be any of the aspects of the qualities of the Sangha. So, Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho, you could recite that over and over again. So you have, certainly in the beginning, you have a little bit of choice there depending on how your mind works, what you find holds your attention, brings you a sense of peace, and sometimes you don't need to think for very long in a more discursive way, and then your mind settles down, and then you may turn to just reciting the one word, or even turn to another object such as the breath. So for me, I'm fortunate. I've met many good Sangha members over the years, and I can remember them as people, but their qualities, their teachings, and their life in different ways. And then sometimes I just remember, obviously, Ajahn Chah. Just remember Ajahn Chah, his face, his name, some aspects of him as a person. And that already puts my mind in a quite wholesome state of mind, helps cut through other more negative thoughts. When you're feeling tired, distracted, fed up, whatever life brings you, whatever your karma brings you, sometimes recollecting the Sangha helps you cut through that. So you can recollect a teacher and it uplifts you, may bring you piti and sukha. In terms of samadhi, the recollection of the Sangha will only bring you to the level what we call upajjhara samadhi, where your mind goes beyond the hindrances and it's experiencing peace, but it's not fully absorbed as in jhana. Doesn't mean to say it's not worth pursuing. It's a very good practice, and as I said, you could later move on to develop another meditation from that, having prepared yourself through the practice of recollection of the Sangha. Then you may turn to anapanasati, or may contemplate vipassana, contemplate even as a development from Sanghanusati, recollection of the Sangha. You could contemplate this teacher that you're recollecting is impermanent. the five khandhas of any enlightened Sangha member are impermanent. That person is subject to old age, sickness and death. They must die, or they did die, maybe they've already died, or they will die if they're alive. The joy of reflection is still a passing state of mind. You can reflect on the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and the selfless nature of the aspects of samadhi or the aspects of the recollection of the Sangha. So you can move into vipassana, or you could move into another meditation object such as the breath and develop an even deeper state of samadhi perhaps. So there's plenty to explore there in your practice. Next question. Dear Lumpur, thank you for your teachings. Lately my aversion towards social gatherings is getting stronger as I find pointless chattering a form of mental torture. However, my wife comes from a big family and organizing family events seems to be a norm. This has led to disagreements and arguments between us. I have noticed that teachers such as Lumpur, though walking the path to purification and towards emptiness, are still actively involved in group teachings and Buddhist events. Can you please guide me on how does Lumpur get involved but not of it? I guess you mean not attached to it, something like that. Well, practice. One of the earliest teachings I remember from Ajahn Chah, he said you have to make your mind even in the practice, meaning your practice of mindfulness, awareness, clear comprehension, and the reflective nature of the mind. You have to bring that up in an even, continuous way, meaning in whatever the situation. You can't just rely on always being on retreat or away from the world, even though those times may be very valuable to you and may be an important part of the practice, having more solitary time for retreat, contemplation. You have to accept life is a mixture, and there'll be times when you meet other people, whether it's social obligations through family, friends, or like you say, in monasteries or Buddhist groups. Sometimes there's ceremonies, rituals, retreats. I mean, even a retreat can become a social thing because you meet other people on retreat. So life has this mixture and you can't always control it so you never meet anyone. Sometimes you can, but other times you will have to meet people and engage with the world. So you want an evenness to your practice. And Ajahn Chah said, I learned to practice so my mind is the same whether I'm on my own or with many people. That's your goal. My mind is the same whatever the posture, standing, walking, sitting, lying down. My mind is the same whatever the activity, whether I'm actually doing formal meditation, or I'm working, or I'm talking to people, engaging with people, helping people, or I'm eating, or I'm bathing, or I'm going out here and there. That's our goal, to keep this evenness of mindfulness and keep the reflective power and capacity of the mind working. Sure, when there's more people around, like you say, we tend to get caught into more pointless chatter, distraction and so on. There's more challenges, but that doesn't mean to say you can't practice. So you have to learn your limit. And don't argue with your wife about these things. If she sees it as an important part of life, well, let her get on with organising these family events, but maybe just warn her that you can only participate so much. Discuss what your level of participation and how much you can give and share. It probably comes from kindness, generosity. These are good qualities. And same for, say, me as a monk and in a monastery, you practice a lot of generosity, helping people, so that sometimes brings people together. and you accept that, and with a mind of metta, goodwill, karuna, compassion, then you can be with many people and it's not necessarily a distraction to your practice. Eventually it could be, so you have to know your limit, know when to rest, when to have more free time, more me time, more solo time. But when you're rested, then maybe you can give more back to others. That's the same in a monastery, same in the lay life. You have to know your energy level, and you have to find skillful ways to keep practicing when you're with other people. So, like you say, practice right speech. So other people may be talking a lot of nonsense or stuff. You can still listen, you can be friendly, you can be there, but you don't necessarily have to do that yourself. And that's part of your mindfulness practice, being mindful of your speech, the content of your speech, your mood, the time, the place, saying things that are useful, conducive to the practice, and avoiding talking about things that are unwholesome, unskillful, that are conducive to increasing defilements in people, greed, anger, and delusion. So that's part of your practice when you're with other people. And we just have to keep practicing, don't we? Keep learning these things, learning your weaknesses. So if you do tend to talk a lot of unskillful things when you're with others, well, you have to be on your guard, be more mindful, be careful, and see what you can do to improve your practice. But the important thing is not to go into aversion or your negativity towards other people. Say your partner arranges a family event, well, try to keep a wholesome state of mind, whatever level of involvement you have. Don't go to aversion, don't complain, don't argue, just accept it. And that's always the rule of thumb in Buddhism. We practice right effort, so we're practicing to abandon greed, anger and delusion and cultivate skillful qualities such as generosity, kindness, mindfulness, wisdom, patience. And that's where your aim is. And you have to be honest. Maybe when you're on your own, you might say, well, I'm not indulging in any unskillful speech. But maybe when you're on your own, you're still indulging in greed, anger and delusion. Sometimes we need to get out and be with other people. That can also be good for us in certain circumstances where you are making yourself be kind, be generous to others, engage with others, help others. So in each situation, whether you're on your own or with other people, try to learn and be aware of what's going on in your mind. Dear Luang Por, next question. Thank you for your patient and kind teaching of Dhamma. I'm thinking about the khandhas. That's the 5 aggregates or 5 groups of experience. My question concerns mind consciousness. Is it mind consciousness that is the one who knows? Is it mind consciousness that makes contact with the other senses to make sense of them? Is mind consciousness the one synthesizing mental formations, perceptions, mind states? Is it mind consciousness that is deluded by defilements? Is mind consciousness another term for the Pali word citta? Thank you very much for your time. Well, mind or consciousness is often translated a translation for citta. So when we talk about the one who knows, this is a colloquial term for the practice of mindfulness, clear comprehension, virya, effort, and even might include wisdom, panya. Certainly leads on to the development of wisdom. So these are 4 different qualities already: mindfulness, clear comprehension, effort, and then wisdom. But they arise in the one mind, the one who knows. So you get an idea. The Buddha talked about the mind And then we have the contents of the mind. In the Abhidhamma we call that cetasika. Contents of the mind are all the different qualities that come up, and some are wholesome and some are unwholesome. Some are skillful, some are unskillful, some are neutral. So with each moment of consciousness, and that's another aspect of consciousness or mind or citta, mind is constantly arising and ceasing. But because each moment of consciousness is a cause for the next moment of consciousness, it seems like this continuous stream of consciousness. But they're individual moments, arising, passing away. So you can have wholesome states of mind, wholesome moments of consciousness where the object of the mind is skillful, the feeling may be pleasant or neutral. We can have moments of unskillful mental states, and the mind is conditioned by an object, and an unskillful state of mind has arisen, usually accompanied by an unpleasant feeling. But these are all the contents of the mind arising, as it were, at the same time as the mind. The contents vary, the sort of different contents, the feeling, the perception, the thought formations, or the mental formations arise together, but they're contained within one moment of consciousness. That's why often things seem quite complicated when we're meditating. There seems to be a lot going on. Things are changing, influencing each other. And then we've got sense contact, sense consciousness, vijnana in the five khandhas. So seeing is one kind of consciousness. You need an eye, you need a light and a form to be seen, and then eye consciousness may arise. And then we remember things as well. So you can remember your past eye consciousness moments, and hearing and tasting, smelling, touching. So we have, that feeds back to the mind. So the mind itself is one consciousness. So we have 6 kinds of consciousness, the 5 physical senses, and then the mind door, which is another kind of consciousness. But the mind can remember everything else. How well it remembers, how accurately, and what interpretation the mind gives will depend on defilements as well. So when we're very defiled, we remember certain things. So if you're seeing, you may remember the bit that you liked from what you saw. And that feeds into your memory, and then you remember, oh, I've seen that before, I like that. You like a person, their appearance, or you might remember that, you give importance to that, so that's what you remember from that eye consciousness and the pleasant feeling it gave you. And that will be accompanied by a sense of self and what we call karma. You make some karma. You like something, can give rise to greed and attachment, maybe. You dislike something, gives rise to aversion and that kind of attachment. So out of this whole study of consciousness, Buddhism centers around this and how consciousness is a conditioned thing. If it's conditioned by defilements, greed, anger and delusion, rooted in ignorance, then it goes one way, it creates one kind of karma. If it's conditioned by wholesome dhammas, what we call the path, the Eightfold Noble Path, goes in a different way. So it's almost like consciousness itself is just a kind of empty vessel, and it's how it's conditioned will give rise to different experiences. And we can practice the path for purifying this consciousness, freeing it from greed, anger and delusion. Or we don't practice the path and we're always increasing greed, anger and delusion, and we probably experience a lot of suffering because of that. So consciousness itself is this quality of knowing, but then how it's conditioned and what's going on will depend on how you're living, the karma you're making, how you treat consciousness, you could say. So it's a big topic. Maybe I'll leave it there for now. We can talk more about that another time. Question. If I feel someone is bossing me around at work, in the meetings, even for minor things like, "Can you do this please?" in a meeting, how can I push back? I think I'm avoiding conflicts, so I accommodate, but don't want to set the precedent that I am taking orders from this person and it shouldn't be. I have been avoiding this person a bit lately, partly because I don't need to have direct contact with her. However, I will be managing a year-long project with this person. I don't think avoiding is the best strategy. Is it worth spending lots of time and effort? Oh, sorry, that's another question. So this question is about somebody who's bossy. So, avoidance is not always a possibility. Occasionally it is. If it's a work colleague, we probably can't avoid forever. So you have to develop some strategies how to deal with them. Like you say, if they're giving you tasks or jobs that it's not really their role to do, then perhaps sometimes you have to push back or find skillful ways not to give in just to their bossiness. So sometimes we can do that right on the spot if we're ready, we've prepared our answer or our strategy, how we're going to approach them and speak to them in the meeting. If we can maintain a cool, calm, even state of mind, speak nicely, diplomatically, we may push back and say, yeah, this isn't my area, this isn't my job, this is yours or someone else's job. We can push back, or if we're not confident enough to do that yet, sometimes we wait and then we push back later when we write an email or have a further discussion and we say, actually, I can't do this thing that you asked me to do. Give some reasons. You have to see what you can manage, and through experience you may be able to also predict situations that are going to arise, and so prepare some strategies what you can say and do in that situation. But if you're finding your confidence is not there and you're being pushed around, well, maybe you have to go away, and when you're in your own time, then you work out how you can explain things or push back to that person in a more indirect way, because you're not able to confront them in the meeting, you're not confident enough. Especially when we're new or encountering a new person who's very pushy with us, that may be the case. So you have to go away and think about it. What can I do? How can I talk to them? How can I get the message across to them? When you're doing that, whenever you're speaking with someone, in Buddhism we encourage it always to establish the mind in metta, goodwill. Even for the bully, have metta for them. Otherwise you may turn into the bully, and that's another part of the whole thing, is to reflect, do I do this? Do I bully people? Do I push people around? But if you're talking to a bully, you have to establish mindfulness and metta so that you're not coming from a place of anger, and that will help you, whatever message you have to get to that person. And certainly some people can be very challenging and difficult, and that's where you have to really bring up the metta, and you have to think of the right words and some plan, some strategy how to deal with them. It's part of life, so we have to learn this. So we have to take it on as part of our practice when we're at work, and reflect back on things. If things didn't go well in a meeting, reflect back later. Why didn't it go well? How could I have done that differently or better? So if you learn from it, maybe next time you can apply whatever you've learned. So as long as you're continually learning, practicing mindfulness, mindfulness of speech, mindfulness of your intention, and then trying to bring up goodwill, but also understanding what is appropriate in the situation, what is right and wrong, correct, according to the job and that situation you're in. As long as you're learning, then you can grow within that situation, even with a bully. You learn how to deal with them. If it's really impossible, then you may have to seek the help of a third party, but that's only in the most difficult situations perhaps. First you want to learn for yourself. And also observe yourself. Do you have those same qualities? Because if you can see them in someone else, maybe you've noticed them in yourself as well. So that's another part of it. Reflect on your own behavior as well. But we're always trying to learn and improve and using the skillful qualities to deal with these situations. Another question. Is it worth spending lots of time and effort on meditation? The one-word answer is yes, because then you'll get enlightened. You have no more suffering, no more trouble with bullies, no more trouble with the world, no more confusion about things. So yes, it is. But of course, if you're in the lay life, you'll have many other commitments and attachments and things, so you have to work out how to improve your effort with meditation. They always say the hardest part of meditation is starting. So that's maybe one reflection to bring up. When can I fit meditation into my daily routine? And of course, get some instruction on how to meditate from wherever you can. Also, sometimes meditating with other people in groups, in monasteries, centers will help because you'll get a boost to your practice. But also just seeing it as a valuable thing, at least give it a chance. So try it for 3 months, 6 months, and then review if you're still in doubt whether it's worthwhile. Most people find if they meditate sincerely for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, a year, they might be able to assess and review and see, they're getting something from it. They may be more mindful, more aware of themselves, more patient, more tolerant, more relaxed, letting go of worries, anxieties. Hopefully some of those results can be seen, and then that naturally feeds into the will, the desire to want to meditate more. So one thing leads to another in a good way. And you can build up good habits, and hopefully it becomes part of your life, so then you don't doubt about it, you realize it's a good thing, and you may sometimes pursue it in a more intense way by going on a meditation retreat or something like that. But you do have to give it chance, you have to have a little bit of discipline at the beginning, give it time, keep working at it, be patient, don't judge the thing too quickly. Next question. How do you know the difference between being caught in nihilism and realizing no self? Well, there's various kinds of nihilism or stages of depths of nihilism, but basically seeing everything as meaningless, pointless. If it's extreme, then people are just saying morality isn't worth it. It doesn't matter. Karma isn't true. It doesn't matter what you do, good or bad, good or evil. These are concepts of the world. They're not true. They're not real. Nothing's real. There's no point to anything. So nihilism can easily lead you to depression, despair, disappointment, negativity. Realizing not self in the Buddhist sense is the highest realization, and so it comes from a mind that is working at its best, a mind that is seeing greed, anger and delusion as not self. So that includes any kind of attachment to a wrong view, which might include nihilism or any kind of negative view, or seeing everything as pointless. It wouldn't lead you to that. True insight into not self is recognizing there's still good and evil, there's still a path of practice, there's still things we have to develop and things we have to abandon. It's not all pointless or meaningless, but as you're doing this, you're also recognizing there's no core self to the good that you develop or the bad that you abandon. You develop the path, sila, samadhi, panya. You're recognizing even within that there is no fixed self. So insight into not self is not a belief, it's not a view that you just take on. It's actually clear penetration of body and mind, the five khandhas, seeing them as conditioned things that don't just exist in a fixed way by themselves. And when the mind is well trained in mindfulness and insight, it can see through the delusion of self. So it's liberating, so it brings the highest peace, the highest happiness. Insight into not self, you could say, is equivalent to nibbana, and it's the highest happiness, the highest peace. So it certainly doesn't lead you to despair or nihilism in the more normal understanding I think people have. I know there are different views on nihilism as well, but it doesn't lead to anything negative or any kind of suffering, and it doesn't lead to rebirth. Nihilism, I'd say, still somebody who is nihilistic would be subject to rebirth, whereas someone who has insight, deep insight into not self, may have reached nibbana, and they've gone beyond rebirth. Or they're certainly reducing the amount of rebirths they have. Sotapanna, maximum 7 more lives. So, there's definitely a difference. I would say one is better than the other. Better to have insight into not self. Question about doing body contemplation. 1, if it's correct to do more body contemplation, should I introduce body contemplation in daily meditation after the mind has gone very quiet and the other senses, such as hearing, etc., have fallen away? Or is it okay to move to body contemplation even when the mind is quiet enough but still has some ripples of thoughts in the background? Well, in one sense you can do body contemplation anytime, and some meditators just sit down and they begin their meditation practice with contemplating the body, running through the 32 parts, the 4 elements, the corpse meditations. Usually probably the most common introduction to body contemplation is the 32 parts, running through them, visualizing them, getting to know them, and focusing the mind on those parts, and particularly the nature of the body as a conglomerate made up of many different parts. That's a very valuable insight to develop, and you can just sit down and begin working on that if you wish, and some people that really suits them. Other people will first develop something to calm their mind, like the breathing or recollection of the Buddha, for example, and then later when they're more calm they turn to the body because they find it harder to just be with the body and be mindful of the body. So you have to get to know your character, but also remember that body contemplation is something you can do in daily life as well, just in more casual ways, like when you go to the toilet, when you have a shower, or when you're just looking, you're cutting your nails, cutting your hair, you're dressing, you're doing different activities. You get, like on a day like today when it's hot and you get sweaty and dusty by the end of the day and you need a shower. That can be done with body contemplation, mindfulness of the body. Obviously mindfulness of posture is part of body contemplation as well, and we can always be mindful of our posture through the day. So these more sort of momentary, small-scale body contemplations are also helpful to build up perceptions and insights in a small way that will help your overall practice. And then when you're more free to do it in a more systematic way, in a meditation, sitting or walking meditation with mindfulness direct into the body, So get to know whether you can do that straight away in your meditation or you need to calm your mind first. And most people do need to calm themselves down so the mind is more relaxed, there's a sense of well-being, then they turn to contemplate the body. Next part of that question is, how do I extend these zoomed states when the mind is very clear? I've experienced it a few times, but they are always very short. Practice more. One recollection after you've had a zoomed mind state, if that's how you use it, the word, that is very clear, afterwards reflect what worked, what happened, what did I do that led up to that, cause and effect. And that can stretch back not just to your immediate meditation, but through the whole day. Say today you have a very clear, deep state of calm, samadhi arise. What led up to this? How are you physically? Are you physically very well? Have you slept enough? How much did you eat? How much did you sleep? What activities have you been involved with today? There may be a number of different factors that have supported this deeper state of clarity or meditation that you've experienced. Then of course there's the immediate cause, maybe your effort. Maybe your effort was very sincere, very genuine and very continuous in your meditation today. Maybe you heard some Dhamma that sparked that effort, faith arose, some joy, some inspiration arose. Maybe look back and see what are the contributory factors to your deeper state of mind. And then of course, effort. Putting effort in even as you experience states of samadhi will keep them going as long as you can. Keep the meditation going, keep the effort going. Because at any time your effort wanes, then of course the hindrances return and they distract you and you go back to a more normal state of mind. So observe this as it's going on, before, during, after, reflect on things, and then repeat your practice daily, and keep working at it, and as you learn more, keep seeing what supports your practice of meditation. Your practice of the precepts will support it, you're listening to the Dhamma, you're maintaining faith and returning to reflections that bring up faith, that will bring up energy. There's a whole array of different aspects to the practice that you can go back to. And associating with Kalyana Mitta, avoiding people who distract you or cause you trouble or whatever, who don't practice the Dhamma, take your mind away from the Dhamma. There's a number of different factors to reflect on which will help you as well. Next question. Can I please trouble you with 2 follow-up questions on body contemplation? 1. I find it difficult to imagine the self as a corpse, but it is easy to pull up the faces of dead relatives I've seen, and that helps my mind to get peaceful. Is it the same using other people's corpses in meditation? Will my own corpse arise that way, or do I have to project the deadness on myself? First time I've ever heard that phrase, project the deadness. Whatever works here, and it's quite possible your first images that you can keep in mind are of other people, whether it's from books, internet, or like you say, going to a funeral and seeing your relative dead, and you just leaves a very strong impression on your mind, and you might remember that image. So yeah, that may be a useful image to keep in mind and return to. If you have a viewing of a coffin at a funeral and that's happened, you're allowed that, then use that as an occasion to really bring in the Dhamma, the stillness of a corpse, the lifelessness of a corpse, or the deadness, as you say. How they've changed, the eyes are different, the skin is different, there's no movement in that body. There's a whole array of perceptions you're bringing up as you watch or observe that corpse. And then later when you're private meditating, you can bring that up. And sometimes it can be from other media, from books or internet or whatever. And then just gently and when you're ready, bring up the image of yourself as a corpse. Sometimes it will arise by itself, automatically, in a dream or in a meditation. When you're peaceful, you may have a vision. Sometimes you have to create that, you work at it. And it may be a kind of sign of how mindful you are and how deep your samadhi is, how settled your mind is, how well you can do it. Like you say, it's difficult at first, so notice when you're particularly peaceful, then you may be able to visualize yourself as a corpse, and then reflect on that, One day this body that we're obsessed with, the looks, the feel, the things we can do with this body, all the sense pleasures we can have with this body, that'll all be gone. Because that's what death is, it's the end of that, and you separate from everything, separate from your body, separate from other people, the world, the things you're used to. You separate at death. There's a whole array of reflections you can develop out of that, seeing yourself as a corpse. So in whatever way works for you, to keep your mind interested, paying attention, visualizing yourself as a corpse, keep doing it, keep working at it, chipping away at it, and sometimes you'll do it better, sometimes it'll be very difficult, and you have to accept that. Meditation is never the same each time you do it. Next question. When using the faces of dead people I've seen, the mind becomes peaceful and gets brighter and brighter. But it reaches a point whereby it becomes harder to hold the image in mind because of this brightness. Well, I would recommend focusing on the image, not the brightness. Just note that there is brightness. As that's more of a periphery, I would say. Focus on the image and making that image really clear, stable, firm in your mind's eye. And the brightness will come and go, usually according to the level of your samadhi and how firm your mind is in samadhi. But if you're doing a meditation on a corpse, on what we call a supa on the body, well, stick with that and really try to get into it. And the brightness is just a sign that you're peaceful or not. So it's not, I would say, it's not the most important thing when you're doing this kind of meditation. If the brightness comes up, should I let go of the image and go back to the one who knows? Because to continue holding on to the image feels like I'm building up tension in the mind and not having a sense of spaciousness, meaning you're not peaceful. Well, that's possible. You're always aiming to maintain mindfulness, the one who knows. At any stage of meditation, beginning, middle, end, whether your mind is bright or not, whether there's a super vision that you're developing or not, you always need to maintain this quality of mindfulness, the one who knows. Keep going with that as much as possible, and be aware that things change, so different defilements or hindrances can return at any time and catch you, distract you, thinking starts again, the mind loses awareness of its object. So number one priority is maintain mindfulness as best you can. So sometimes you have to accept this image of the body won't last and it fades. Okay, then just keep your mindfulness going go back to your normal meditation object. If you have the breath, for example, go back to that. But your priority is always keep up mindfulness so that you can be alert to the arising of hindrances, defilements, and do your best to abandon them when they arise. The overall reflection is everything is impermanent, so super images are impermanent, they come, they go. Brightness of mind is impermanent, it comes, it goes, depending on the state of mind. Mindfulness comes and goes, but your aim is to maintain mindfulness as much as possible so that you can reflect and see impermanence as much and as clearly as possible in your experience. So that's the end of the Q&A session tonight, and we wish you well with your practice.